A former interpreter for the British Army in Afghanistan has told Sky News that the data leak at the Ministry of Defence has made his family a target for the Taliban. Yesterday, it was revealed that the personal information of almost 19,000 people who helped or worked for the UK had been leaked online, with some of them only finding out now, 3.5 years later. The Prime Minister says there are serious questions to answer. Sky correspondent Adele Robinson has our first report tonight.
I was working as an interpreter with the British Army in Afghanistan. Interpreter was on the first target for the Taliban, and the Taliban call us the British eyes.
Brought to the UK for his protection, Ali, not his real name, thought his family was safe until his data was leaked.
I have carried a dead body of the British soldier. I feel betrayed by the British government.
He believes his father was killed because of it.
My father has been died because of the Taliban take him to the custody and beat him. That's why he died.
Ali's relatives are now in hiding in Afghanistan, fearing for their lives.
Every day, every single minute, my family is waiting for their deaths because if anyone comes to knock the door, they think that it's the Taliban.
He's among thousands of Afghans who helped the British military, whose names we now know were exposed 3 years ago. After his siblings were arrested, Ali raised concerns to the Ministry of Defence over his data in this email last year. "I'm terrified," he said, "and I beg of you, do not pass this information to anyone."
They say nothing. They just ignore what I told him, and they never reply me back with this email.
Then on Tuesday, the day a super injunction was lifted by the High Court, this confirmation his data had been leaked. The Ministry of Defence is yet to respond to Sky News, while the Prime Minister insists there will be scrutiny.
The Defence Secretary set out the full extent of the failings that we inherited. A major data breach, a super injunction, a secret route that has already cost hundreds of millions of pounds. Ministers who served under the party opposite have serious questions to answer about how this was ever allowed to happen.
With thousands more Afghans being brought to the UK as a result of the breach, there's concern over whether it will create tension in communities like Bracknell, where hundreds arrived at this hotel earlier this year.
These are people who risk their lives for British values, and what's more, those who have been supported on this scheme are given support to integrate into life in the UK. So, look, I do understand why people raise legitimate questions. That's right and proper that they do that, and it's important that we answer those questions transparently, and that's why it's so important that we've got clarity on this secret Tory scheme.
Ali's tried and failed, meanwhile, to get his family to the UK, and if legal action doesn't work, he says he'll go back to Afghanistan and give himself up. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
The data breach was kept under wraps until yesterday. Our political correspondent Rob Powell has been taking a look at the timeline of how this was kept behind closed doors.
An extraordinary leak, but an even more extraordinary reaction by the previous government. Now, this all started in February 2022. Boris Johnson was still in office when the data breach initially happened. But we're told it took 18 months for the Ministry of Defence to be made aware after some of the data appeared online and journalists started asking questions. By this time, Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister and his Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, applied for the injunction, he says, to protect those at risk from the leak. Ben Wallace then stood down and was replaced by Grant Shapps as Defence Secretary, and in September, a High Court judge gave the government more than it had asked for by granting a super injunction, banning anyone from reporting that the court order even existed. Now, in October, the government asked for this super injunction to continue, but then in November, a different judge seemed to sound the alarm, saying the super injunction was likely to give rise to the understandable suspicion that the court's processes are being used for the purposes of censorship. But he went on to approve a 4-week extension to it anyway. Now, the following month, ministers met to arrange a new secret resettlement route for people put at risk by the data breach. 4,500 Afghans would come to the UK this way at a cost of over £800 million to the taxpayer. The super injunction was also extended for another 2 months at this point and continued again in February 2024 until the 21st of May, when the same judge ordered it to be lifted, saying it is fundamentally objectionable for decisions that affect the lives and safety of thousands of human beings and involve the commitment of billions of pounds of public money to be taken in circumstances where they are completely insulated from public debate. Now, the day after that ruling, Rishi Sunak called the general election, under pressure on both public spending and immigration. But then, in the middle of the campaign, government lawyers went back to court to appeal the decision. 3 judges agreed and blocked the lifting of the order, meaning the details of the leak, which, remember, would have been revealed days ahead of the general election, well, they stayed secret. Now, the July general election, of course, then brought Labour to power. And in February this year, the new Defence Secretary, John Healey, is warned about the multi-billion-pound costs of the Afghan resettlement schemes, and he orders a review. Now, that finds the data leak is unlikely to have increased the risk to affected Afghans, and so the government asks for the super injunction to be lifted, and the details are made public. It's a long and messy saga, played out largely behind closed doors, that raises big questions about the power of government and the courts in times of crisis.
Former interpreter for the British Army, Nessa Ahmed, joins me now alongside his daughter, Najina. Good evening to you both, and thank you for joining us here on the UK Tonight to talk about this data breach that affects your family. Nessa, if I could ask you first, when were you made aware that your information, your family's information, was compromised?
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me here. I received 2 emails yesterday afternoon. The first email showed that the application, which had been sent by my email, been leaked. And after that, I received another email, which was self-checker tools. And I checked my mother's application reference, and it showed the reference I supplied is correctly, and it likely been affected by the breach. And also, as I'm fighting with complex PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder related to my service with the British Army, immediately I've been triggered, and I had flashback, then I've been dissociated. And then my family and my daughters rang up Courage Veterans Mental Health, Dr. Zara, then she guided them with the grounding techniques to bring me back.
Yeah, Nessa, had quite the impact on you learning that your mother's information was out there. Your mother, of course, still in Afghanistan. And Najina, can you talk to me about what that experience was like? Obviously, your father lives with PTSD, and that is from his time working with the British Army in Afghanistan. And this brings all of that back. It must have been extremely concerning for you to witness.
Hi, thanks for having us. It really was quite concerning seeing him start dissociating again and not being able to process what just happened with the breach. And the breach is not merely a security lapse, but it also raises human rights questions and how the rights of citizens are not being protected. And this also affects the Data Protection Act 2018 as well.
Can I ask what your mother has made of this? Have you been in touch with her since you found out her information was part of this data leak?
It's me or her?
Nessa, it's you. Beg your pardon.
I didn't understand, sorry. Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Yes, your mother. Have you been in touch with her since you found out about this?
Yes, I've been in contact with her yesterday and also today, and she is really scared. And also where my mom's living with my childhood friend last 3 years. And I supplied with my childhood friend's address on the application. If the data leaked, according to Afghanistan International News, the Taliban has access to the data which have been exposed on 2022. And they track the people who work with the British Army or British forces, and they're hunting them down. It affects everyone by this breach.
Yeah. Nessa, you had an immediate reaction when you found out the news. You've explained that, and it sounds really scary and frightening for you and your family. But can you just describe to me how you're feeling about what's been described as the carelessness with which the British government have treated the Afghans who helped them during the war in
The Ministry
your
of
country?
Defense should be ashamed for their negligence. They betrayed, especially the interpreters who stood shoulder to shoulder with the British Army in the front line for the protection of peace. And now their data, which is super confidential, and being leaked, and the Taliban has access to that. It's totally shameful for the Ministry of Defense, and I request them to take it seriously because this matter is not like a joke. It's a matter of life and death of thousands of people, especially the families of interpreters who stood shoulder to shoulder with the British forces in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Nessa, do you wish you'd have found out about this 3.5 years ago when it happened? Because the government's reasoning as to why there was this super injunction and this data breach, the information about it was kept behind closed doors, was to keep you and those like you, those that helped the British forces, safe. Are you accepting of that?
No, I'm totally confused now because, as I mentioned, I'm fighting with PTSD and I can't make any decision or I can't say that. But that's totally betrayal and it's shameful. I don't accept what the UK government did.
Najina, what do you want to happen now? Your father's pretty clear that the British government should be ashamed. What do you want to happen?
I think the Ministry of Defence and the government, they need to take responsibility for this, and they need to acknowledge this failure to the public, and they need to help and support those who have been affected by this, including us and my family, my grandma in Afghanistan as well.
And the hope being that your grandmother can come here to the UK?
Yes, definitely, because she's in a very vulnerable position, in a very vulnerable situation, who not only she's at risk, but my dad's childhood friend. If the data is leaked, if it gets to the hands of the Taliban, my dad's childhood friend's address is on the information leaked. That means not only my grandma's at risk, but also my dad's childhood friend and his family.
Nessa Ahmed and Najina Ahmed, thank you so much for speaking to us here on the
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate you talking to us, Nessa.
It's
I
our
know this has
pleasure.
been really traumatic for you, so I really appreciate you coming on to tell your story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer suspended 4 of his MPs today. Sky News understands Neil Duncan-Jordan, Brian Leishman, Chris Hinchcliffe and Rachel Maskell have all had the party whip removed, which means that they will now sit as independents in the House of Commons. All 4 MPs voted against Labour's welfare cuts. Let's bring our chief political correspondent, John Craig, for more on the fallout to this. John.
Labour left-wingers are furious, but there is a lot of sympathy for Rachel Maskell, not so much for the other 3. The other 3 MPs, Mr Duncan-Jordan, Mr Leishman, a Scottish MP, and Chris Hinchcliffe, they were all MPs elected last year. The 2 English ones won their seat from the Tory, Mr Leishman from the SNP. Rachel Maskell is a well-known campaigner on disabled issues, welfare issues, older people. She was an opponent of the winter fuel payment cuts as well. And there's a lot of sympathy for her. Now, what happened was they were called to the Chief Whip's office, that's Sir Alan Campbell, mid-afternoon. When Rachel Maskell came out, she was close to tears, clearly distressed. She said, "I'm not angry, I'm upset." She talked about her faith that brought her into the Labour Party. She talked about how she was also talking about helping the vulnerable people, disabled people, poorest in society and so on. But she also did say that she's never going to give up the fight. She went away and composed herself for a few minutes. Then she came and spoke to me in the central lobby of Houses of Parliament. This is a flavour of what Rachel Maskell told me.
Well, first of all, I don't see myself as a rebel, but somebody that is prepared to fulfil my role here of holding the executive to account and speaking truth to power. And I'm somebody that is a bridge builder in life and really reaches in to a situation. And I hold my hand out to the Prime Minister and hope he takes that and wants to reach back. Because I think it's really important that we work together. That's where the Labour Party came from. But, you know, obviously choices have been made today.
So not the sort of rebellious talk you might expect from someone who's just had the whip suspended. She hopes to come back. The other MPs were defiant, although Brian Leishman told Sophie Ridge here on Sky News that he was devastated. But what happens now, of course, they're suspended over the summer recess because, of course, Parliament is breaking up for the recess early next week. This was the last Prime Minister's questions until September. Will it work? Will it bring more discipline to Labour MPs? Possibly not. They've got the summer now to plot and speak out in their opposition to measures like winter fuel payments, welfare cuts and so on.
John, thank you. John Craig there in Westminster. A report into the UK's anti-extremism programme has found it missed chances to protect the public from the man who killed the MP Sir David Amess and the attacker who murdered 3 young girls in Southport. The Prevent scheme is designed to spot potential terrorists before they commit acts of violence, but a major review has found a series of failings in both cases. Our social affairs correspondent Becky Johnson has this report.
Prevent failed and people died. 3 young girls stabbed to death in Southport last summer. Their murderer, free to travel to a dance class to kill them, had been referred to the government's counter-terror programme 3 times. On each occasion, despite his obsession with mass killings, the case was closed because no one particular ideology was identified. This report says Prevent should be looking at people like him.
Short term, we have to acknowledge the nature of terrorism has changed. It's harder now to tell whether someone has got a terrorist ideology or something else. And we've got to stop fussing about exactly what's inside their head and put the safety of the people first, including, of course, the person that you're dealing with.
The families of the Southport victims say real change now needs to come in order to prevent what they're facing. They're calling on the government and authorities to ensure they do more than simply pay lip service. At this boxing gym near Telford, they take young people referred by police, social workers and schools. They see troubled, violent teens. Surprise here that Prevent is only now being told to adapt to the online world.
I think the risk of online radicalisation of young people needs to be taken a lot more seriously. I think young people are no longer feeling safer online. I think it's so much easier to access harmful content. We're seeing a rise of young people accessing that content, accessing communities that are unsafe.
Prevent also failed to identify the risk posed by the murderer of the MP, Sir David Amess. Ali Harbi Ali murdered Sir David years after being referred to Prevent, but his case was closed. That was human error. The MP's family are demanding a public inquiry. What this report highlights is that Prevent is failing to detect potentially dangerous individuals in too many cases. And every time someone slips through the net, the consequences can be devastating. In a written statement, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said the report clearly highlights the failings of Prevent in both the Southport case and that of Sir David Amess, whilst also recognising the energy and urgency that has been shown in making changes to strengthen Prevent. That means identifying violent individuals intent on killing, regardless of ideology, to stop atrocities that raise questions over the ability of the state to keep the public safe. Becky Johnson, Sky News.
The parents of a woman who died after she was misdiagnosed by a physician associate has called a review into the profession a missed opportunity. Emily Chesterton died in November 2022 after suffering a pulmonary embolism, which was missed by someone she believed to be a doctor. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has more.
Let the wounds they build inside your heart slowly depart.
Emily Chesterton died from a blood clot after being misdiagnosed by someone she thought was a doctor. Instead, she was seen by a physician's associate. They can examine patients, take medical histories, and diagnose illness, but they're not doctors. And now their role will change after a government-ordered review.
Do you think Emily would still be alive, would be here today, if these recommendations had been put in place before she was seen by a PA?
I would hope so. I think so, yes, which is so important. which is why we're so pleased that this review has been made.
If she'd come out and said, I've seen someone called a physician's associate, I'm sure we would have insisted that, no, let's go back and insist that you see a doctor.
She never knew.
No.
The report by Professor Gillian Leng says physician associates should be renamed to assistants to stop patients from confusing them for doctors. They should be banned from diagnosing patients who have not already had contact with a doctor for their illness, and she's also called for them to wear a specific uniform and lanyards for more training and closer supervision by doctors.
We feel it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
It could have gone all the way there and cleared things up totally. But however...
It's something. Our daughter died. She was prescribed a drug that she should not have been prescribed. And it had absolutely catastrophic circumstances. She died, for goodness sake.
Marion and Brandon's concerns are shared by the British Medical Association.
It is definitely a problem that the roles of doctors and now physician assistants has been blurred, and it is positive that their name is going to change, that there will be a uniform. But whilst they continue to be deployed in a way that mimics doctors at the behest of any local employer decision, we have to have ongoing concerns about their safety.
But physician associates say the changes will undermine their qualifications and their role. They also warn of the effect it could have on waiting lists and worsen the impact of any strike action.
By trying to placate them at a time when they're striking and they want their strikes to bite the hardest, by taking us out of the workforce, we're now putting patients at risk. And I think the biggest patient safety risk out there right now is the British Medical Association.
The NHS is overwhelmed and struggling to cope with increasing pressures. There is a risk that these changes could add to them in the short term. But Emily's parents believe they could also save other families from suffering like they do. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Still to come on the UK tonight, calls for the children of sex offenders to be given more support. We'll have a special report for you next.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Sky News has found that some sex offenders are getting more support than their families, who are often the ones left to deal with the shame and stigma on their own. Those who offend online are rarely jailed, which means their families are not recognised as victims. Caterina Vitozzi has spoken to a convicted paedophile and his daughter, who was just 13 when her dad was arrested. Just to warn you that Caterina's report contains references to indecent images of children and suicide.
When did you start looking at indecent images of children?
It was probably right around 2013. I just enjoyed looking at it, you know.
Imagine finding out your parent was an online child sex offender.
I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. I was so scared that people would think that I would end up like him as well.
You might think this is rare, but it's happening to thousands of British children every year. So what would you do if it happened to you? Or if this was your child? Where could you go for help? Is there enough support for children?
Absolutely not. Those children will absolutely fall through the gap.
What you're about to hear is disturbing. But we wanted to investigate why online child sex offenders get free, automatic help, but their children are entitled to nothing. You'll hear from Ava, who was left with suicidal thoughts due to her father's offending. But first from her dad, John. He agreed to speak to try and stop people from doing what he did and to get help for families. We've changed both their names to protect their identities for fear of reprisals.
I was on the internet on a chat site. Someone sent a link. I opened it and that's what it was. Then more people started sending links and it just kind of gathered pace from there, really. It kind of sucks you in without you even realising it. And it becomes almost like a drug to, you know, get your fix sort of thing.
What was it about it that you found so compelling?
It was just... I just enjoyed looking at it. And at the time, you kind of don't think about what you're doing and how wrong it is.
After years of offending, in 2019, John was arrested. Police found more than 1,000 indecent images and videos of children on his laptop. What was that immediate 24 hours like for you after your arrest?
I wanted to kill myself. It was the only way I could see out of the situation because your mind kind of runs into overtime. Then I'm thinking about my daughter, my son. How's it going to affect them?
This is where Ava comes in. Then living with her mum and just 13.
We were out for my brother's birthday and we'd just been to Pizza Hut and we'd had a really good evening. And I remember being in the car on the way back and my mum got a call and she answered the phone and it was the police. I was so scared. After that, we found out that we weren't going to be able to see our dad for... Well, we didn't know how long we weren't going to see him for or even speak to him. I couldn't text him or anything. I was just wondering what's going on. Like, I didn't know. I didn't understand.
Meanwhile, John had been released by police on bail. He was planning to take his own life until a call changed everything.
It was Friday afternoon and I planned to go and do it on the Friday evening. But I was given some leaflets at the police station of organisations that can help. One of them was an organisation in Leeds. I called up and I spoke to the chap who was very sympathetic and understanding of the situation and that I was in. And he said to me, "Have you got any thoughts of suicide?" And I said, yeah.
So do you think that free counselling, that support saved your life?
I think so, yeah. At that particular point in time, yeah, it kind of stopped me in my tracks, really.
But for Ava, the nightmare was just starting. She eventually spoke to her dad, who told her what he had done, but unlike him, there was no free professional help to deal with what came next.
When I found out, it genuinely felt like my world was crumbling around me. I didn't get offered any support. I got told that we were going to have to speak to social services at some point, maybe get interviewed or something like that, but then nothing really came of it. I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. I was so embarrassed of what people might think of me. It sounds so silly, but I was so scared that people would think that I would end up like him as well. I felt like this really big secret that I just had to hold in.
You can't share that with anybody. It takes a very, very brave man to go around sharing it with people because people can get killed for things like that.
And do you think your children carry that same sense of fear or shame?
No, they wouldn't tell anybody, would they?
I genuinely felt like the only person that was going through it because I didn't know anyone else whose parents had done something like that.
But the fact is, she's far from the only one. Every month in England and Wales, there are 850 arrests for online child sex offences. And whereas those suspects, like John, can access free services like counselling for their children, there is no such support unless families can pay. It's leading to children with serious mental health issues who are more likely to offend themselves. Do you think it's fair or right that in terms of professional therapy and support, that offenders get more support than the children in these situations who are, much less emotionally able or mature enough to...
They're a lot more vulnerable, aren't they? I think they should get more support than the offender because nobody stops and asks them, really, do they? Nobody thinks about what they're going through.
If I'm being honest, I turned to drugs. I was doing lots of class A's and B's and going out all the time. I guess because it was just a form of escape for a very, very long time. There was a point in my life where I just didn't believe it was going to get better. I really just didn't want to exist. I was just like, if this is what life is like, then why am I here?
I understand that this is probably something that'll affect the rest of our life. You try and protect your kids, don't you? People try and protect their kids from people like me.
We asked the Ministry of Justice about whether these children should be classed as victims and entitled to free help. They told us, we sympathise with the challenges faced by the unsuspecting families of sex offenders and fund a helpline for prisoners' families which provides free and confidential support. But we've now contacted that helpline and they told us that they can only help these children if and when their parent goes to prison, which for online offences they rarely do. And even then they don't offer a service like counselling. The Ministry of Justice also sent us a list of charities that they said could help. But when we contacted those charities directly, they said they don't offer services to these children.
Those children will absolutely fall through the gap.
In 2021, Professor Rachel Armitage started Talking Forward. It's the only free peer support group for families in England. But even they don't have the resources to help under 18s.
So we'll have families that are paying for private therapy for their children, getting in a huge amount of debt to pay for that. So if we could get these children recognised as victims, as the Domestic Abuse Act recognised children in a domestic abuse household as being the victim of domestic abuse, even though they weren't a direct victim, so they get the therapeutic intervention, referral to school to let them know that something has happened which that child needs consideration for. But I think there's some sort of belief that these families are almost not deserving enough. There's some sort of hierarchy of harms, and the harms that they've experienced, they haven't been a victim of a contact offence, that it's not taken seriously enough, or that they're harmed enough, really.
In some ways we're kind of forgotten about by the services, like you say, it's always about the offender and there isn't really anything for the families.
There may be people watching this who are going through right now what you went through. Yeah. Is there anything you want to sort of say to those teenagers?
Sorry. I guess I just...
Why has that question made you cry?
I think because I probably needed to hear this at that point in my life. I had people telling me that there were people, but they'd never been through what I had been through. So I brushed it off, but I would tell them to stay strong. And it will get easier over time.
Well, if you've been affected by the content of Katerina's report, you can contact the Samaritans at any time. Their number is 116123. You can email them, joe@samaritans.org. The details on your screen there. Still to come here on the UK Tonight, we'll hear from the campaigners who are calling on the government to apologise to thousands of women who were forced to give up their babies in the decades after the Second World War. Welcome back. Now, campaigners are calling on the government to apologise to women who were forced to give up their babies for adoption in the decades following the Second World War. The movement for an adoption apology gathered in Westminster today to demand accountability and action from the Prime Minister. A new short film called The Removed highlights this issue, which affected around 200,000 women from the late 1940s to the 1970s. Let's take a look.
Been waiting for you to find what you lost.
I don't understand. This is mine.
I know. It'll always be yours. It doesn't matter where I am now. I will always be yours.
An adopted son meeting his birth mother there. Well, I'm joined now by the director of that short film, Rebecca Rose, and Karen Constantine from the Movement for an Adoption. Apologies. Ladies, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Big swell of support out in Westminster today. Karen, why did you want to take on this issue for your short film? What moved you to action, if you like?
Yeah. So I'd been reading lots about forced adoption over the last few years,
and I'm a mother.
Rebecca, sorry.
Rebecca, no,
sorry.
it's fine, Karen, it's all good, don't worry. And I just, you know, I like to give, shine a light on things that haven't been told and stories that haven't been told. And so I felt compelled to write a story that explores forced adoption, which was the removed. And then I connected to this incredible lady here, Karen, who is on the MAR committee, the MAA, and amongst lots of other ladies as well. So we've become great friends. But I just feel that this story needs to be told, and you guys need justice.
We need greater awareness. I mean, Karen, you have some personal experience of this. This nearly happened to you.
Yeah.
When you were 15. This was back in 1978. I mean, we said this was happening between the 1940s and 70s, and when we were speaking in the break, you said, actually, this is happening up until the 80s.
Yeah.
This is recent history, which is just so shocking to hear. Perhaps you can give us an idea of what it was like for you when you were 15.
It's very simple, really. It was a very shameful thing to be young, unwed, and pregnant. And when that happened, there was a well-trod path and a network of institutions that would grab you with their sticky claws and quickly squirrel you away and put you into
church, hospitals, schools,
state, doctors, priests. There was a network, and they would send you away, you know, to cover up the shame and the embarrassment for the family, send you away. But what I found out when I was doing the research for this is that was something that people paid. It was a privilege that people paid for. So when I went away into a mother and baby home, my parents had to pay, and it was actually more than they could afford. And that was the case in all of these mother and baby homes. It was a monetised process. And then when the babies were eventually produced, they were found adoptive parents and donations were expected. So this was a really quite a commercial operation. And we're fairly confident that actually 500,000 women went through this process.
Yeah, because we're saying about 200,000, but presumably, Rebecca, as you've discovered through your work with this film, the stigma attached to it is such that many families will have never spoken about this.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. I've spoken to so many people who have shared their stories with me and have never shared the stories before to anyone, which was a huge privilege for me to speak to people who would be so open and trust within me. But as Karen says, I think that number, the 215, it's a very low estimate. I mean, it's huge, and it very much did go on into the 1980s, didn't it?
Yeah.
You know.
And we've been calling on government to do the research. We think research should be undertaken so that people can know the true picture, you know, because it wasn't 215,000. There was many, many more women that went through that process.
Do you feel it's still being swept under the carpet? I mean, the organisation that you're part of, Movement for an Adoption Apology, I was surprised to find out that an apology has been issued by Northern Ireland, Scottish and Welsh authorities, as well as authorities in Canada, on Australia, where this was also common practice. But the UK government is still yet to do so.
Yes.
Why?
It's hard to understand why, because it would be a relatively simple thing to issue an apology to the women.
And why is it so important to those women?
The JCHR, the Joint Committee on Human Rights, was convened by Labour ministers. It concluded in 2022 that an apology and reparation should be given, so additional help and support. That hasn't been implemented. And one of the findings of that commission was that these women, now a very aging cohort, are dying, and they're taking that shame, that sense of shame, that burden, to their graves with them. You know, I mean, only a few nights ago, I had somebody contact me who's in her late 70s, who was in a mother and baby home in the early 60s, still hasn't had that reunion, still hasn't been able to trace that child that was taken from her. And there's a common misconception that women were giving away their babies. They weren't.
Because they were young and vulnerable and couldn't
They
cope.
were given
all of
no
those
options.
stereotypes about young mothers.
Yeah.
Rebecca, a final thought. I mean, the UK government has apologised, saying given a response, saying sorry on behalf of society for what happened, but it was not appropriate for a formal government apology to be given since the state did not actively support these practices. Rebecca, a final thought from you, because obviously this has happened in Westminster today, your movement, you're demanding an apology, your film is out now. What do you want to happen from this point in?
Yeah, and it's just also a huge shout out to the adult adoptee movement and Zara Phillips today, who organised the protest. But I just think for likes of many women that we both know, that this apology needs to happen, because like Karen says, there are many women now, and fathers as well, who I've spoken to, they're dying. They're at an age where they need that justice and apology to move on, you know?
And perhaps to trace those children, and for those children to be given the opportunity to trace their parents as well, because so many of them may not know. Listen, it's an issue that's not talked about enough. Thank you so much for bringing it into our studio tonight. Rebecca Rose there, film director of The Removed, and Karen Constantine as well from Movement for an Adoption Apology. Ladies, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Right, still to come on the programme. We'll have the latest from Zurich for you. The Lionesses preparing for their huge quarter-final clash against Sweden in the Euros. And with less than 10 hours to go now until the final golf major of the year gets underway, we'll be looking ahead to the Open at beautiful Royal Portrush.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash.
Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes. Sky News, the full story first. I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent based here in Bangkok. We've been undercover inside Asia's huge network of scam centres.
This compound is, without a doubt, the worst. It is essentially hell on earth.
We cover a vast, varied and dynamic region that's shaping the rest of the world.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, the countdown to kick-off is on. England's Lionesses preparing for their crunch match against Sweden tomorrow. We'll have the latest for you from Zurich. But first, David is here with the rest of the sport, and we're taking a look at some golf, looking ahead to the Open at Portrush. And why do they call it beautiful Portrush, I wonder?
Do you know what? But this is it about the Open. I mean, it's all links courses by the sea, and when you've got the golf course framed by the sea, there's something quite unique and beautiful about it. So yes, this is the scene. We're on the Causeway coast in Glens area. It's an area of outstanding natural beauty, breathtaking course with sweeping views of the Atlantic Ocean. Oh, and there's a golf course there as well. It's overlooked by ruins of 13th century Dunluce Castle, hence the name of the course, the Dunluce Links. And as I say, this is like a very, very kind of different test. Obviously, the golfers, when they go and play the majors, 3 of them are in the States, and this is the only one that isn't. Now, 20 years ago, Rory McIlroy actually came to this venue. He was 16 years of age.
Oh, he's a local lad, isn't he?
Yeah. and he went round in 61. Now, if you are a golf fan, you'll know that's an incredibly low score, especially for someone at that age. And he returns this year, finally, as Masters champion, coming back to his native Northern Ireland. In fact, I think he was spotted wearing his green jacket as well. Why not? I mean, you know, you're Masters champion. If you got it, flaunt it. And when he speaks about being here this week, you can really sense his chest is bursting with pride as a Northern Irishman. Take a look.
How good would it be to bookend the major season, win the first one, win the last one?
That wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, it would be pretty nice. But yeah, it's, you know, it's so nice to be home, so nice to see some familiar faces, and you know, this course is obviously one of the best in the world, and it's just, yeah. And I think as well, what makes me so proud is, you know, having the rest of the field here, and a lot of them coming up to me and being like, you know, this is an amazing golf course, an amazing area, and so, you know, that's been really nice too.
Rory tied for second at the Scottish Open last weekend. The last time the Open was held at this venue, it was won by another man from the Emerald Isle, in Shane Lowry in 2019. So maybe it is his time once again. He will tee it up tomorrow alongside Tommy Fleetwood. And, of course, you can watch it live on Sky Sports Golf. Let's tell you about what else is going on in the sporting world, including the cricket.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
How do you manage to keep your spirits up and the spirits of your teammates after challenges you may face?
Self-confidence in yourself and your own ability is such an important aspect to have.
I've had a number of injuries the last year and a half or 2 years, and you know, they've taken their toll on my head at times.
You know, sometimes you just need to grab somebody and just give them a hug, you know, tell them that it'll be okay.
Professional footballers helping young people with their mental health. That's the aim of virtual soccer schools, alongside learning platform Amazing People Schools. Online, in person, and with AI technology.
My question is, how do you deal with stress on and off the pitch?
Football is the most powerful sport in the world. And utilising footballers, we just see them as players on the pitch, passing the ball and scoring goals, but they have so much more to offer. So at VSS, we're providing them with a platform to showcase their mental health strategies, their setbacks, how they deal with anxiety, pressure, and growth mindset.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
I thought we were still watching the rugby with a tackle of that cycling fan. Right, now after a less than ideal start to the Euros, the Lionesses bounce back in style. Big wins over the Netherlands and Wales, taking them into this knockout stage. However, Serena Wiegmann's side face a sterner test in tomorrow's quarter-final against Sweden, who are unbeaten in a year. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has this report from Zurich.
The Lionesses talk about having a home away from home at the Euros. But this is as English as you can find in Zurich. Not that you'd find the players dropping into the Nelson, but it's a pub oozing their tournament mantra.
Proper England. Proper England.
It's inspired their fight back from losing to France to thrashing the Netherlands and Wales, setting up a quarter-final clash with Sweden for the reigning European champions.
England in the past, it was you have to dig out performances and you are maybe the underdog, you're not the favourites. Whereas this England team has developed, football has changed. Obviously, we're a very talented team, a lot of technical ability, tactics, all that comes in the game, but we don't want to ever forget that we are England, we are proper England.
Proper football as a concept has certainly galvanised the team, but how much, though, is it a footballing philosophy or a concept to serve as a rallying cry and to avoid in-depth tactical discussions in public for the Lionesses? Certainly Sweden has been heavily influenced by English football going back to the 19th century. So how much will we see a similar approach here?
We always had the physical part. I feel like the Swedish team has become like a more technical side, you know, and we play a more like intense football.
The Sweden of 2022 lost to England in the Euro semi-final, but now they're unbeaten in a year, sweeping through the group stage with 3 wins, peaking with a 4-1 crushing of Germany. But from a flat start, England feel they're fizzing with confidence.
Cheers.
And all this talk of philosophies is a world away from the experience of the pioneers, the Lionesses who just fought for the right to be an England team, the fight only won in 1972.
Yes!
We had snarky remarks thrown at us about you should be at home doing your cooking and cleaning and everything we paid for ourselves, or our parents did. And where it is today now, it's amazing. Yeah, the kids all shouting, oh, well, I'll be 2 and I'm going to be bronze. It's Williamson, you know, they're all such household names now. Things have come on in leaps and bounds, haven't they?
The image of England is one of champions now. 1 win from a 6th semi-final in a row. Proper England defined by perfection. Rob Harris, Sky News, Zurich.
A quick look at the weather now.
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, the next few days looking warm and humid with a risk of thunderstorms, but it will turn cooler and more widely unsettled over the weekend. Much of the UK fine to end this afternoon, but the southwest and Ireland looking murky with outbreaks of rain or drizzle. The south of Ireland may see some thundery downpours. Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwestern half of Britain will see low cloud and patchy, locally heavy rain extending to most parts overnight, keeping it quite warm.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Just some breaking news to bring you from West Yorkshire Police. They are saying that 7 people have been charged with murder after the fatal stabbing of Shamus Hussein in Dewsbury. The 7 men will appear before magistrates in Leeds tomorrow, charged with that murder of Shamus Hussein. More on that throughout the evening here on Sky News. Up next, it's Anna Botto.